Thank you, Dion, for the introduction. Hi, guys. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Ariel Musazadeh. I'm an attorney. I work for Mirage Law. We primarily do business startups for healthcare professionals. We do a lot of startups for private therapy practices. And most of my clients, believe it or not, are in the behavioral sciences. So I really enjoy this part of my business, especially helping other people start their businesses and education. So the reason why we're doing this, first, I'd like to thank Camp for bringing me in to do this presentation. Is for my years of work as a transactional attorney in startups, I've realized that there is a very big education gap from what you guys learn in school to the actual practice of private practice. So I kind of go around and I try to educate. I try to fill that gap with education. So one of the things I've realized is that in school, just like how for lawyers, they never really taught us how to start our own business. You guys as therapists also, you might have had a course or two about it, but there wasn't really a simple breakdown of how to do it, what it looks like, what to be worried about, and the best and quickest way of going about it. So that's why we're here. I'm going to try to be as brief as possible with it. At the end, you will find my contact information. Feel free to email me or call me or text me at the phone number that you see on file at the end of the presentation, and I'll gladly answer any other questions you guys might have. And again, as Yana said, we're going to stop every 5-10 minutes. If you guys have questions, please put it in the chat and we'll get to as many of them as possible. Thank you so much, and let's get started. So it's 10 tips to quickly and easily start your private therapy practice. Number one, excuse me, my slides are going to, what I'm going to show you today, the benefits of starting your professional corporation, how to actually start the professional corporation, and common issues that people have. So first off, I always get this question, what is a professional corporation? So professional corporations are special types of corporations for professionals, as the name says. You guys are licensed professionals. If you guys are LMFTs, LCSWs, psychologists, PCCs, whatever you guys are licensed professionals. And as licensed professionals, you cannot form the traditional LLC or corporation. That is one of the biggest things that come to mind when I see these type of professional corporations formed. Many of my clients come, either they've been audited by their insurance companies, or they heard from someone else that they were misformed. They've been practicing for a few years as an LLC. They've been practicing as a general stock corporation. People don't know that they're not allowed to do that. And the insurance companies might be coming and saying, hey, we're temporarily suspended and you cannot bill anymore until you get this fixed. So that's something that first and foremost, if you speak to someone, if it's an accountant, if it's even an attorney, and they tell you, hey, yeah, you can just form an LLC and start practicing, or hey, you could just form a corporation, a regular run-of-the-mill corporation, and start practicing, antennas go up immediately. It's not valid. You cannot practice under those two type of entities, and you must practice as a professional corporation. Some people argue and they say, why a professional corporation? Maybe I just want to be a sole proprietorship, right? That's kind of your two choices. You can just use your own social, don't incorporate, or you can form a professional corporation. Your two options. Why I think there is a greater benefit in incorporating as a professional corporation. Number one, you limit your personal liability. That's a very big thing. When you open up a correctly formed corporation, your assets, your personal assets are protected. In the event something goes completely haywire and the corporation goes south for bankruptcy or whatever reason, if you have a corporation that's correctly formed, the corporation will take the fall and you can walk away. If you're a sole proprietorship, that whatever liability that arises affects you directly as an individual. So that is the number one reason why people incorporate, is to protect themselves personally from liability. Number two, He does minimize your self-employment taxes. That's something that we'll get to in another slide. You save around 15.3% on self-employment taxes. Number three, you are able to build corporate credit. There are a lot of other reasons, marketability, easily selling the business in the event you need to do that, divvying up shares, but these are the three biggest things. Again, if you guys have questions, feel free to leave some comments over there in the comment section. Just to go over, can you form an LLC? Definitely not. You have to be a corporation or a sole proprietorship. I just really need to knock that nail in the head just to make sure that you guys get that. And then these are the steps that I see. I call it the 10 steps. First, you file with the articles of incorporation with the Secretary of State. You apply for a tax ID number or an employment identification number with the IRS. Statement of information. You get bylaws drafted for your corporation. You have an initial meeting minutes, banking resolutions. Get taxed as an S corp by S corporation filing. You pay your franchise tax board. I call them the mafia. You pay the mafia. You register with the EDD when you want to hire employees. You apply for a local business license registration, or you can get a business lawyer like myself, have them do all of it for you from beginning to end correctly. And this is one of the second, if not a third biggest question I get is, why do I have to be taxed as an S corp? Right? People always talk about the S corp, the S corp, the S corp. What is an S corp? So the S corp is actually a code within the IRS code, which says that it's basically called a small business corporation. That's why it's called an S corp. A regular corporation that is started, anytime you start a corporation, if you do not elect to be taxed as an S corp, it is going to be taxed as a C corporation. C corporation is a general corporation. The drawback of a C corp is that you're taxed both at the corporate level and the individual level. So you would get taxed one time at the corporate level, and then when you actually take that income and you put it on your own tax return, you get taxed again. What the S corporation does is it makes your corporation a pass-through entity where you would not get taxed at the corporate level, you would get taxed only at the individual level. That way you don't get double taxed. You do save money on that. I just need to say, I'm not a tax attorney. I cannot give tax advice. I'm just telling you as much as I know about it. You can read more about it. If you have questions, feel free to ask me later. But that's why most small businesses are not C corps. They are S corporations, small business corporations, because you don't want double taxation.
Ariel, there was a question about the last slide. They wanted to know if, are we going to go in more in depth in it and kind of just slowing down? Are we going to go into each of them in detail going forward?
Yes, the 10 steps, yes.
Okay.
We will go over them one by one. I just was trying to give you a
perfect
overview of all of them. We will go over each of those one by one in depth. I just wanted to give you guys a quick overview.
Awesome.
Thank you. So, benefits of the S corporation: you avoid self-employment tax as much as possible. The corporate practice of anything, why do people basically create a corporation, is that because it allows you to have write-offs. That's a very big thing. What is a write-off? People always ask. So when at the end of the year, when you have to pay taxes, you take all of this income, you get all of this income as when you're running a business, and they're going to tax you on that. Write-offs are things that you use commonly for running your business. It can be when you pay rent, you have utilities, you have licensing costs, you have any expense that you have, they're considered write-offs. The lower your income is at the end of the year, the lower the taxes are that you will pay. When you run a corporation and you're self-employed, like for myself, when I have my own business, you have to basically pay a portion of basically the corporate tax. Corporate taxes are basically employment taxes. You have to pay workers' comp, all of that stuff. All of those expenses, everyone that is self-employed must pay them. Those are salaried expenses. But when you are an owner of a company, you also get passive income because you also are still the shareholder of that company. So by you starting an S corporation, you basically are able to make the salary amount smaller, because the salary amount is where you're basically going to be taxed on the basically the workers' comp and other employment taxes, and the dividend portion you don't. So that's basically where the biggest savings are. The 15.3% come because you're not paying taxes on the dividend portion, which is the passive portion. So that's something, again, you should be discussed more with your CPA or whoever your tax preparer is. But in a nutshell, you basically will save around 15.3%. Some people more, some people less, based on basically just having a corporation. That's why people do it. And that's the biggest reason why people do it, other than protecting themselves from liability. Again, if you have questions, please put in the chat. I'll do my best to explain them. Let me give you an example. It's very confusing if you don't know anything about corporations. This example makes it very, very clear. So Maria is a sole proprietor who brings in $90,000, right? Maria could be any of us who have their own business. After she pays her costs and expenses, her profit is $60,000. As the sole proprietor, she's required to pay self-employment tax of 15.3% on her entire $60K profit, which is equal to $9,180. If Maria had formed as an S corporation for a business instead of a sole proprietorship, she can pay herself a $35,000 salary, and on that salary, she'll be taxed, right? And the remaining 25,000 of it will be profited as a distribution, as a shareholder. She'll still earn 60K in profit, but she'll only have to pay Social Security and employment tax on the salary now. Instead of paying it on the full 60K, she's only going to be paying it on the $35,000 salary. So she saved $3,800 a year by doing that, by being a corporation. Very simple. Again, if you have questions about it, I can go over this again with people. But that's the reason why people always get S corps. They either get an LLC or an S corp. They do the same thing, but S corps in particular, for you guys, you will save a lot of money in the long run by being an S corp. So just some specifics about forming the corporation. Another big question I get is about the name. Especially, this is particularly geared towards MFTs. If you're not an LMFT and you want to know about your name requirements, please contact me. I have it for all therapists and for anyone that's in the medical field. I have all their name requirements for each of their corporations. Feel free to contact me and I'll help you walk you through that. But it's a little funny for LMFTs. I enjoy it because it makes it it's kind of like a puzzle. So the name must include marriage, family, or child, together with counseling, counselor, therapy, or therapist when you want to start your corporation. And it also must include corporate designations like a professional corporation, APC, Inc., Incorporated, all these fun ones. But again, of course, LLC is not permitted. And this is an example, Mango Family Counseling. I like mangoes, so you'll see it. Mangoes is a common theme in my presentations, but Mango Family Counseling, that you can create that corporation and it'll be perfectly fine. But that's not the only name you could use. So technically, you guys can also file for a fictitious business permit or a DBA. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of what a DBA is. A DBA is basically you can operate under a different name. Right? Once the company is formed, you can operate under a different name in that specifically for that county. DBAs, corporations use that all the time. They don't want to basically keep changing the name. You can just have one corporate name, the original name, and you can do business as several other names. You have to file it in every county you're practicing in and publish it 4 times in a publication. And that is valid for 5 years in the state of California. So that Mango Family Counseling can get a DBA or a fictitious business name and practice as Mango Therapy, Mango and Friends, Mangoes for Sale, it is limitless what you can do with the DBA. It's very common, especially for MFTs, because the names are a little nuanced. People want to practice in a certain way. Some people just want to practice as mango therapy instead of being mango family therapy, because the name requires that. So DBA is something that's very common and is utilized by you guys. If you have questions about that, feel free to ask. I can explain it more. But that's just a quick overview of what the DBA is. Now,
Can I
go
ask a
ahead.
quick question on the name since you're right here?
Yeah, sure.
So someone was asking, there's actually two questions from this person. One, can it say individual in the name?
What do you mean?
Patty, if you don't mind explaining that.
I can.
Yes, like instead of using marriage, family, or child, can it say like individual therapy or couples therapy?
No, so they're very, very, that's a great question. Thank you for asking it. Number one. The Secretary of State is very specific about how the name requirements are. That's why I'm even discussing it. Many people, they come to me because they've tried over and over again and they can't get it right. It has to include marriage, family, or child together with counseling, counselor, therapy, or therapist. So it can be family therapy, or that's why the DBA is utilized. So some people have to form, sometimes they use their name. They would use let's say Ariel Marriage Counselor Inc., and then they would get a DBA as whatever name they would like it to be, and they're able to utilize it and market themselves as that. So they're very specific. It can be individual marriage counseling or individual family counseling, but it has to include one of those three, beginning three, and another one of the end four. Does that make sense?
Yes. Sorry, but the DBA, so for example, if I were to do something like the example you gave, like Patricia, what did you say, Patricia and counselor or counseling, and my DBA, can it be a name that doesn't use those words?
It does, it can be, yes. So it can be,
Okay.
at that point, yes, that's when the DBA would be utilized. You can do Patricia Family Counseling and the DBA can be individual therapy. And you don't have to include Inc., you don't have to include Corp. It can just be, it would be called Patricia Family Counseling Inc., doing business as individual therapy. That's how it would look. But you wouldn't need to write the beginning portion. You would just need to, when you market things, it would just be individual therapy. The only time you would write the beginning portion of what the corporation name is if it's in a contract, if it's for with your intake, for your patient intakes, you will need to include that on anything that's going to be, they're going to be signing, because they need to know that you're doing business as, that original corporation name is doing business as something else.
There's two more questions, if you don't mind, about this. Another one from Patty of, do you have any suggestions for the DBA, whether it's best to have the 4 publications locally or outside of the state and country?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Do you have any suggestions whether it's best to have the 4 publications, like how you have in this slide, locally or outside of the state and country?
It's a very good question. The publications must be done in the county that you're going to be practicing in. So if you're in LA County, you would need to publish it 4 times in the publication in LA County. So you'd have to file the DBA with the LA County, a county recorder's office, and then you would basically publish it 4 times in a publication in the county. It's a very old school type of business that they do. I don't know why they still do it this way, but they still require it. The county still requires it. Every county in LA, in California does still require it that way. Orange County, it's California code until it changes. I don't know when they're going to change it, but that's what the code is.
Thank you. And Patty, if that didn't answer your question, feel free to say something.
We
And one more
do
question.
have a question from Ben.
Yeah. Do you already see it?
Yes, I see it. It says, do
Okay.
DBAs need to be filed in every county we work in, regardless of seeing? That's a very good question. I get telehealth questions all the time. So when you do telehealth, you're basically, it's a very complex thing. This is new. What I'm recommending now for telehealth is that just do it for the county that you're actually, your principal place of business is, so to speak. So if your offices are in LA, but you're seeing patients in Orange County, let's say, I would recommend just doing the DBA in LA for now, until things get a little more sorted. I don't think that it's required to do it in every county if you're not physically going to be in each of the counties. But if it was out of state, it would be a different story. But in state, you could just do it in the county that you're in. Everyone good? Any other questions? Cool, guys. Okay, and also if I'm going too fast, tell me to slow down. I like it. I enjoy. Just tell me when I need to slow down also. And then, so this is a slide that I'm really going to get more into what each of those 10 points are. So let's get started. So the corporate registration, that's what gets actually filed with the Secretary of State. We call in articles of incorporation. That basically is what we file with the Secretary of State and gets this business started. So that's what actually gives you the liability protection. It'll basically protects you for anything in the event that the business goes south. Whatever you own individually is protected from what the corporation does. The articles of incorporation and your corporate registration do that. So that's why that needs to be done correctly the first time. That's why I keep stressing professional corporation, not a general stock, not an LLC, because if you do open those other types of corporations, they will not provide corporate protection for you practicing professionally. So that's the corporate registration. The EIN is a very talked about subject. It's a tax ID number. Each business, each corporation that is filed will get its own tax ID number. That tax ID number, you will use it along with the filed articles of incorporation to go to the bank, open your corporate bank account. That bank account is completely separate from anything you do individually. You can have your own bank account at Wells Fargo, but your business, that corporation, will have its brand new business bank account, and they do not interact. You do not take money from your individual account and cross and mingle them together. They need to stay separate for a million different reasons, but most importantly, you want to be able to show that your corporation and you as an individual are two separate entities. And that's what the tax ID number does. It allows you to open up a completely separate bank account. When you do file your taxes at the end of the year, your corporate taxes, and also your state taxes, they do ask you for your tax ID number, your EIN. It's an imperative that is done after the corporation has been registered, because you can't put the horse behind the wagon. It has to be done in that particular order. Some people do go and get their tax ID number because they're overzealous before they start their corporation. Don't do that. Please don't do that. Okay. The bylaws are basically, I call them like the backbone of the corporation. They tell the layperson how the corporation is going to function, who the officers are, what the address is, what the business is doing, basically when the annual meetings are. Don't forget, when you start your business, you are a fully functioning corporation, just like McDonald's is. You and McDonald's are the same. You might be just one person running the show, but you and McDonald's, according to corporate law, you are literally the same entity. You can be as big as they want to be. They can be as small as you are. You're about the same. So the bylaws basically establish your rules. They establish what banks you're going to be at. It basically legitimizes your corporation. It gives you basically the blueprint of the corporation in the background. That's what the bylaws are. They have to be done correctly. Excuse me. The statement of information is something that's filed annually with the Secretary of State. What it does provide the Secretary of State with basic information. Every year you have to tell it who the officers are, you have to tell it who the directors are, you have to tell it who the registered agent is, what the business address is. Every year. It's a very simple thing, but every year you have to tell them. If you don't, there's penalties. Better to stay on the state side. So that's what the statement of information is. And then finally, the S Corp election, as I spoke at length about, it does convert it from the C corporation to the S corporation, from the general corporation to the small business corporation. That's what the S corporation stands for. And it does give you that pass-through status that does allow you to save 15.3% approximately on your taxes. Those are the other portions of the corporation. If you guys have any other questions, I think we have a question from Stephanie. Stephanie says, if a person is doing a DBA sole proprietorship, is it required to do 4 published publications? Yes. Any DBA that is started must be published 4 times. You have to file it with the county and publish it 4 times. It's a requirement. It's what the code says. We do it every couple of days. I have to do a DBA, and you should do it. You should do the publication portion if you haven't yet. A good question. It's a good question. This is some common questions I get all the time. So, can my spouse, who is not a licensed professional, be a shareholder in my corporation? Answer, what do you guys think? Definitely not. No. All shareholders must be licensed. However, and this is specific again to marriage and family therapists. There is a way that you can split. As an MFT, they have to own at least 51% of the corporation. The other 49% can be owned by other MFTs, licensed physicians, psychologists, LCSWs, nurses, chiropractors, acupuncturists, neuropathic doctors. So there is a way you can always own it, co-owner with another person who is not necessarily a MFT. Again, if you're not an MFT, if you're licensed, if you're a different type of professional, contact me. I'll tell you what the breakdown for that is. But across the board, just as a rule of thumb, non-licensed professionals cannot be shareholders in a professional corporation. Doesn't matter what type of license you are. I get that question all the time, especially from doctors and nurses. They all want to, the lay person wants to be a shareholder. It's not allowed in the state of California, unfortunately.
Do you mind if we pause just for
Please.
like some of the questions? So Megan, do you mind explaining your question a bit about the officers and sole proprietorship?
Sure. You said like I've worked with, I'll say, with nonprofit boards. So there's boards and there's minutes and there's votes, and you had said officers. So I guess I'm thinking if we started as a S Corp, so as a sole proprietorship to start off with, who are these board members going to be? And you're touching on it now that it has to be licensed folks, but I mean, I guess I'm kind of thinking if I'm starting myself, how many people do I want to bring into a business I'm just starting?
Excellent question. So nice to meet you, Megan. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
That's a very good question. When you're a sole proprietor, it's not a sole proprietor at this point. When you incorporate, you're a full-on corporation. You can be the sole shareholder, you can be the sole officer, you can be the sole director. You're not required to bring anyone else on.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
When you do incorporate, you don't need to bring anyone else on. It can just be yourself. You're going to wear many hats. That's completely fine. As long as you stay in compliance, that's all that matters. Some people want to bring on their spouses and make them the COO. Maybe there's some people that I know that they hire their friends. If they have a big company, they hire their friends to run the company. They run their friends to be the officers because they just want to practice the profession. They can't really deal with the actual business transactional portion. And that's completely fine. You can do that. But especially in the beginning, most people that do start up, if they're alone, they wear all the hats themselves. That's completely fine.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And then regarding 501c3, I don't do nonprofits. I do have a referral who does do that. That's a very nuanced type of law. I'd strictly deal with basically for-profit corporations and companies. Please contact me later on and I can refer you to a source who would be able to take care of that for you. Brian. Here's another common question that I have. Can I use a PO box for the address? That's a very common question. No, you have to have an actual address. The workaround that we do use now is a virtual address, especially if people are doing telemedicine. I always tell my clients to keep in, some people say, can I use my home address? I say that's completely fine. However, keep in mind, especially for you guys that are in the behavioral sciences, these addresses, whatever address you do list, is going to be published on the Secretary of State's website. So it does become public. Some people are okay with that. Some people are more weary of that. I just have to let you know. So you have to have a legit address. A virtual address does work. It becomes 1234 Main Street, Unit 6. Usually it's just in a virtual office where they collect rent. I do have some sources that you can use for a virtual address. If you ever have a question about that, email me. I'll give you a few choices that I do provide to my clients. We can get that taken care of for you. So that's always a big question. And then what are the annual requirements? So this is where the mob comes to play. The corporations owe the Franchise Tax Board a minimum of $800 a year or 1.5% of the net income, whichever is greater. That goes not only for corporations, it technically goes for sole proprietors as well. So even if you do not incorporate and become a business, a professional corporation, and you just want to use your own name and be a sole proprietorship, you still would have to pay the mafia $800 a year, regardless of how much money you make. You can make $1,000, you can make $50 million, you have to pay the Franchise Tax Board. But one kind of caveat that there is to that is that for the first year, if you do file your taxes on time, the Franchise Tax Board will waive that $800 requirement. You won't have to pay it for the first year. Thank you for them for doing that. But every other year, you will pay a minimum of $800 a year to the Franchise Tax Board. If you do have a DBA that lasts for 5 years, after 5 years, you have to renew it, but you don't have to republish it again. And Secretary of State, there is an annual fee for the Statement of Information, but I think that's like $25. It's not a big deal. But this is usually the biggest kicker, the $800. But do also keep in mind that all of the expenses that you do spend annually for the corporation, including this, are tax deductible. If you hire employees, if you pay for anything that's related to the business, you are able to write it off against your income at the end of the year. That's a good thing. So always keep that in mind. We do have a question from Patty. It says, does a virtual address have to be in the same city that we get our business license in? Yes. Your business license is for each city. Each city you go to, you will have to get, each city that you do start your business in, you will need a business license. I recommend getting the business license at the end once everything is done, because we don't know where the chips will fall. I always recommend waiting until you've fully incorporated, finish the whole process, and then get your business license. But if you work in the city of Los Angeles, you have to get a business license in the city of Los Angeles. Each city is a little different. I would contact the chamber, and they'll tell you if it's even required or not. Some people, they're not required, but it's a good question, Pat. Okay, and then this is how much we typically charge to do it. We charge $14.97 to do the corporation package. We also do give a discount to you guys for every practice group that I speak to. We do offer $500 off the package. It includes all state and filing fees except the DBA, because that's each county is different, and we're very fast. It used to be 3 to 4 weeks. Now sometimes it's even 1 to 2 weeks. We work extremely fast, so we usually file either the same day or the following morning, and sometimes you get a response back in 4 days. But again, it is the state, So it's kind of a crapshoot, so to speak. Sometimes they're very, very backed up. Sometimes they're not. So I always recommend, if you have any urge to do it, the sooner you do it, the better, because we don't know what's going to happen in a month or two. Sometimes it takes 2 months to form it. So I always recommend doing that. Sooner you want to do it, the better. Not only you can reap the tax benefits of doing that, but you also can get started on actually gaining corporate credit, which is extremely important for the health of your business in the future. So, yeah, that's that. And any other questions? I'm here. Ask away, whichever you guys have. If you guys have any other questions, I'm gonna make myself available. Please, if you want me to explain more things, I'm here.
Yeah, and thank you so much for the presentation and giving this. I took a ton of notes, so it was very helpful. So yeah, if anyone has questions, you can raise your hand, you can just speak out, put it in the chat. It's pretty much free for all at this point.
Hi, Ariel. I have a question.
Hi.
Back to the PO boxes. There are a lot of places now that the mailbox centers that you actually have an address that doesn't say PO box.
Yes,
Is that okay or not?
perfect. That's completely fine.
Those
That's
do
what
work.
I'm talking about. Yeah, the mailbox centers now, they have addresses. So that's what I consider a virtual address. You just can't have it say PO box. You
Right.
can't have it say PMBR. Sometimes it says PMBR. It needs to say suite number, unit number.
Okay.
Something like that. Just don't let it, because it'll get rejected. Just make sure that the place that you go, they know that, say, hey, I'm starting my business here. I'm using this as my business address. If they're familiar with that, you should be good to go.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Other questions? I'm not charging, so ask away.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. I'm curious, at what point in the licensure process would you recommend that people start looking into forming an S corp?
Okay, that's a very good question. You need to be licensed. Make sure you passed your boards, your license is ready to go. Once you're licensed, get started. You technically cannot start your corp. You can form it, but it's against business and professions code, like big time. You need to be licensed. You have to be licensed to be a shareholder in that corporation. So just wait until you're licensed. Good question, Ben. Thank you. Again, if you guys do have other questions, come to mind later. This is my email address, my direct phone number to my office. If I don't answer, just ask for me, Ariel, whatever you want. I'll be there. I'll make myself available. That's my website, Mirage Law. We actually have a blog up there regarding professional corporations for LMFTs. We're updating the other, but we had a bunch of other ones for the other behavioral sciences. We're updating all of those as well. So they're not up yet, but the MFT one is updated for 2023. Feel free to go through there. And if you have questions going through that, email me, call me, text me at that phone number. I'll reply as soon as I can. Patty, another question. Tell me.
Yes, so I know you said that you suggest we don't get our business license until the end. We won't need like a business license number to do like the corporate registration or to get the EIN.
No, the business license is going to be from the city. So think about it like this. You have to first start at the state, and then you can, once the state approves you, then the little localities will approve you. So first we need to get, because your licensure is with the state, we first have to get you, make sure your corporation is fully formed with the state. Then we'll go to the city and get your business license. But your business license, let's say you start your business in Los Angeles and then you end up moving to Orange County or Ventura or anywhere else. Each city where you go, you will have to get a new business license. So if you have let's say you have two offices, one in Ventura County and one in Los Angeles County, you will need a business license in each county or each city realistically, but it matters. Each city is different. I always say, ask the city. if the city is going to require you, they'll tell you. They want your money, so they'll tell you. But usually business licenses are pretty cheap, so around $100 or less. Okay, then let me go back to the questions in the chat. Stephanie asked, I have a quick question regarding the 4 publications. Tell me, Stephanie, do you want to?
Hi, thank you so much. This is all
Sure.
so it's wonderful. I'm learning so much. Thank you. I just had a
Sure.
quick question. If I were to do a doing business as with my name and all that, a sole proprietorship, regarding the 4 publications, is there a due date? Like you need to do that within the first year of starting your business, or you don't? Or if you don't do that, is there a penalty? Like if you can elaborate a little more, and if you mean just like putting it in the LA Times, or where exactly do these publications go?
So the publication requirement, I believe it has to be done within the first 40 days of the corporate of you forming your DBA. The fine is technically, if they catch you without the publication requirement, it's an invalid DBA. So even if it's been in business for a while, I would still recommend you immediately publishing it. Publishing it can be in a periodical. It's not the LA Times. You can just search Google for the publication specific portion of that for the DBA, but you should, if you already formed, if you're working as a DBA and not at the corporation, I recommend you publishing as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure,
Take
sure,
care.
no problem. And then Trudy asks, do you need a business license even if you're a sole proprietor? That's something that's specific for each city. So I would ask the city. Typically, I'll tell you this is a rule of thumb. What I've seen is that if you have an EIN, you will need a DBA. You will need a business license, but ask the city. I would call the city, they'll immediately give you an answer. And Patty asked, do we need proof for our records of the publications? Yes, you will need to, you have a proof of publication that will be provided to you by the periodical. That's something that you need to keep for your records in the event anything is audited or questions are asked. We had a hand up, Diane, please.
Okay, I've been in business for a long time, but I did an LLC and I did it under the spiritual and music education umbrella.
Okay.
If I do some practicing as a therapist, is that not going to cover me, or will it, as an employee or whatever of the LLC?
That's a very good question. Technically, under the LLC, you cannot practice therapy.
No.
The income that's derived from the practice of therapy cannot be placed into that LLC.
Okay. So if I call it coaching, will that work?
It's an LLC. Again, if the income that's derived from the practice, okay. I see your question. So instead of therapy, you're saying you're doing coaching.
Right.
That's a very good question. If you're doing coaching
And teaching, that's what
and
I'm,
teaching, and people know explicitly you're not providing them with therapy, your intakes and basically anything that they're signing is saying, I'm not providing therapy, it's only coaching and teaching, then you're not utilizing your license. You're
Okay.
not providing therapy. It's like me teaching people how to fish. I'm a lawyer, but if I take you fishing, I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm just taking you fishing. So that's kind of how I would see that. But I would, you're going in you're treading a very thin line. I would watch out, because I wouldn't want you to practice therapy under that LLC. I would explicitly state that you're not practicing therapy. If you're seeing clients, you would say, I'm not acting as your therapist. I am acting as your life coach. I'm acting as your, I'm educating you. I'm not providing you with therapy. I would just make sure that that's disclaimed whenever possible.
put the disclaimer in my website or whatever.
Yes.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Oh, Diane, you can also, this is something that it is possible, and I do this for my clients. You can always convert that LLC to a professional corporation. Many people do that if they've been formed in a way for a long time and they don't want to lose their tax ID number, they don't want to lose their corporate credit. We can convert that LLC to a professional corporation, to Professional Marriage and Family Therapy Corporation, or whatever your license is under. That is something that can be done. The process is very particular, and it's hard to do. I can explain it to you at another time. Feel free to call me if you have any other questions about that or whatever. But yeah, it is something that can be done.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
Sure. Other questions? Other questions? You guys are, I love how it's 7 o'clock at night. I'm sure you guys have all been super busy, and I love how you guys have been asking questions and you've kept me, you know, up and running and answering questions. I love that. You guys are an awesome group. I look forward to helping you guys if you need help, hearing from you guys. If you have any other questions, feel free to email me or call me. If you have friends that have any issues or they're trying to start their business, please tell them. I'll honor that price for them as well. And yes, it's a pleasure speaking with you guys. And thank you so much for joining me. And I wish you nothing but the best.